Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's video. As you saw in the pre-intro, it's a bit of a doozy. It's a real fun one, and it's really easy to play as well. A lot of you guys have been asking for an easy to play build. Well, here it is. Today's build is centered around Elemental Blast, Holy Fire, and the Shaman shocks. So let's get straight into it and talk about all the interactions. Booming Thunder. As you're casting Elemental Blast, you get 4 stacks of Booming Thunder up to 20, and each stack increases the damage of Earth Shock, or in our case Stone Shard, which is an Earth Shock variant, by an absolute shit ton. Elemental Domination removes the cooldown of Elemental Blast, so you can just spam it as you saw in the video. Elemental Lord. As you're casting Elemental Blast, you have a chance to empower your next shock, so it works out to giving you 100% more shock damage, sometimes on proc. Absolutely insane value. Righteous Radiance. As you're casting fire spells, you gain a stack of Righteous Radiance, and at 5 stacks of Righteous Radiance, your Holy Fire cleaves 5 targets and also does a lot more damage. This works out very well with Burning Inner Fire, because when you have Inner Fire, the ability applied, 1 fire spell cast gives you 2 stacks of Righteous Radiance instead of 1. So instead of having to cast 5 times, you only need to cast 3 fire spells, and you get to do your massive Holy Fire. And also, we're running together in this combo Kindles for Holy Fire, which each individual fire spell gives Holy Fire 15% more damage. This one doesn't get 2 stacks with Burning Inner Fire, so it is actually okay to sometimes overcap Righteous Radiance if you are working out on your rotation and it feels like it is the right play to do. Overloaded Mind, 10% spell haste as you're casting Elemental Blast. Elemental Equilibrium, 10% fire damage as you're casting Elemental Blast. You can see the gist here. The Spell Slingers, you're playing the Shaman Capstone and Elemental Focus, so both the Spell Slingers bring a lot of value, single target and AoE for the build. These two we talked about. Amalthazad's Curse, just 5% crit, but this build is a very crit hungry one, so it is highly worth to be stacking a lot of crit inside your build. Waxing Moon works together with Moontouched. So Moontouched, as you cast Moonfire, or in our case Sunfire, which is a Moonfire variant, your target takes 5% more spell damage and has a 5% higher chance to be critically hit. So you cast this at the start of the fight, and with Waxing Moon, as you're doing spells onto that target, you prolong the duration of Sunfire and the Moontouch buff indefinitely. So it remains there for the rest of the fight, you just have to cast it once at the start. Consuming Flames, your Ignite does a lot more damage. Clear Mind, 1 more stack of Elemental Focus, which works to proc the Spell Slingers more easily. And also 5% haste, even just the 5% haste by itself is enough value. You also want to be stacking haste in this build besides crit. Seeds of Flame, 8% fire damage, 8% nature damage, that is for Stone Shard, and everything else is fire. And the rest of the scalers, you can probably understand why they were brought into the build. So let's talk a little bit about the abilities. I will just have these, which I think are kind of mandatory, locked in. So Imp, 5% fire damage, 5% crit. I also run Felguard because you sometimes want to swap it up. This gives 5% overall damage, so your Stone Shard benefits as well, and also gives 5% damage reduction. Plus you can play Soul Link if you want for even 6% more damage reduction. You will see one of the strengths of this build is that it leaves you a lot of open abilities to play with. Earth Shock, I play it because sometimes your Stone Shard doesn't reset. You get super unlucky. By the way, Stone Shard sometimes has a chance to reset, which actually induces you to want to press it on cooldown, even though you don't have max Booming Thunder stacks. So in the case that it doesn't reset, I use Earth Shock on 20 stacks of Booming Thunder to make sure that we're not overcapping that value too badly. Frost Flame Shock and Flame Shock, both of them Flame Shocks, they give 6% haste and also benefit from the Elemental Lord buff, so just overall huge value. And also, together with Reverberation, makes your Earth Shock do 20% more damage. So you want to ensure that before you press Stone Shard, your previous global was either Flame Shock or Frost Flame Shock. Molten Armor crit, Elemental Blast, our main filler, Glacial Fire, Holy Fire, the 2 Holy Fires. Then 4 totems, together with the Totemic Focus talent, gives 80 haste, 80 crit rating, very valuable. 1 Blink, Elemental Mastery as a cooldown, Tectonic Shockwave, when I've been testing it the last few days, it's been bugged. Literally, I'm pressing it. I can see on details that Tectonic Shockwave hits 6 targets, but then my Stone Shard does not cleave at all. But in the case that they will eventually fix the bug, it is going to be really high value for AoE, because your 80k Stone Shards will be hitting 6 targets for insane amounts of damage. Divine Shield on immunity, very nice. Inner Fire for the talents with Righteous Radiance. This is not really necessary. Twisted Mind, Spell Power, and 3% hit. Arcane Power for the cooldown. Totem of Wrath, the best totem. Okay, also Wrath of Air totem, 3% haste, and the other 2 totems I run are Fire Resist, and I forgot. Oh, and Strength of Earth. It's quite irrelevant, like the 2 important ones are Wrath of Air and Totem of Wrath. Sunfire for the Moon Touch, Moonfire interactions. And the rest of the things, you know, are up to you. Personally, I like to go Divine Sack plus the talent, Divine Guardian. It's a very nice 20% damage reduction to the entire party and can also be used as a personal defensive. I bring Mark of the Wild as a buff, 1 extra blink because why not, a kick of course, and the last ones I'm still kind of undecided, maybe Bark Skin. I still have 2 ability cards to select and actually still 3 talent cards left. So this is the build, this is the setup, and for the gear I'm running 10 Storms. I think it's the best caster set, also gives haste and straight up magical damage, which is obviously really nice. And for the off pieces, just the highest budget spell power pieces I have, some Ascended Rings from a Blackwing Lair, some Neftir and Insignia of the Dragon, dual wielding for the double arcane artillery buffs, so kind of the classics. Mystic Enchants, I'm running 3 Lunar Guidance for more spell power, 3 Divine Fury for 6% more damage taken when the target is afflicted by Holy Fire, 3 Inner Fire, so we go up to 22 stacks, so that is 22% more fire damage, but in this case you get around 2% from each. 3 Booming Echoes, increases damage of Flame Shock, Earth Shock, and Elemental Blast, which are our main damage sources in single target. 2% haste, 2% crit, and these last 3 are up to you. I'm running some 2% hit and then straight up 1% fire damage modifiers. If you need more hit, get more hit, otherwise get more damage. If you need more crit from gear, you can also run Critical Mass for 2% fire crit. And that is kind of it for the setup. Let's take a look at a video so I can go through the rotation very slowly. Let me make sure I'm recording everything properly. I am. So the rotation is kind of simple. I place down my totems to start. I popped all my cooldowns, pressed Sunfire to give the Moon Touched buff right here, which is going to do the 5% damage, 5% crit. Then I pressed Flame Shock to get 6% haste from lava flows, I think. And also this buff which we're tracking, even though you don't really need to because it's up, it should be up most of the time, which gives 10% more fire damage. Afterwards, an Elemental Blast. And now we're built up to 5 stacks of Righteous Radiance. At this point you should cast Holy Fire, but I think I do another Elemental Blast by mistake. Then Holy Fire, Elemental Blast, and as I am building up the Booming Thunder Shocks, because as I said before, you want to try to press Stone Shard on cooldown, I did there a Frost Flame Shock, followed by, I think, yes, a Booming Thunder. It was with 14 stacks from the previous hit of the Elemental Blast that was flying. You always want to, as I said, do a Flame Shock before Stone Shard because of the Booming Echoes, now because of the Reverberation buff, which increases the damage by 20%. And this is kind of the rotation. Glacial Fire or Holy Fire on 5 stacks of Righteous Radiance. Otherwise, you're keeping up your spamming Elemental Blast and pressing Flame Shock before dumping your Booming Thunder charges with Stone Shard. As you can see, we're now at around like 50k, and I think as the fight goes on and I figure it out and smoothen it out a bit more, we go up 53k, 54k, yeah, and holding steady at around 54k, you know, after doing 9 million damage on the dummy. Let's take a look at the breakdown. Elemental Blast first, big crits, then Ignite second, Stone Shard third, Holy Fire, Righteous Flames, and the Flame Shocks and the Arcane Bursts coming in last. yeah, it's a very simple to play build, very straightforward. Also allows you time to look around and think about what you're going to do next as positioning and generally optimize your gameplay. Highly recommended. Also very fun, like really enjoyable. Like most of the rotations in Ascension, I really enjoyed. Do I think it should get nerfed? No, absolutely not. There are builds out there that are doing even double the damage of this build, like doing huge unchecked amounts of damage. So given the complexity of this one, I think it is sitting at a healthy DPS. For AoE rotation, guys, it is basically exactly the same as the single target rotation, except you will be replacing Flame Shock with Frost Flame Shock in all cases, and really making sure that you're casting Holy Fire on cooldown to get it to cleave. The sad part, let me see, do I have my buffs? The sad part, or at least the nice part about this, is that you are basically chilling, doing the same rotation as in single target, and still doing very nice cleave. As you can see, we're around 80k. It's gonna come off cooldown here. 90k. It's not a huge damage gain playing AoE versus single target, but it is highly effective because you're basically doing the same thing and having great success with it. Okay boys, I think this about wraps it up for today's video. Thank you very much for watching and stay tuned for more. Peace.